Mom and Dad. For most of 2014, Mom and Dad needed 24-hour care. We had 3 caretakers that rotated through so that someone was there day, night, and weekends. Dad had been taking care of his finances and paying the caretakers, but nearing the end of 2014 it became a problem. The 3 ladies could not get along, and the bickering got worse and worse. I had to start paying them, and start watching the bills and finances. Mother had a problem that called for her to be taken to the Rockwall Hospital by ambulance. The caretaker for that afternoon went in the ambulance, and Dad decided to stay at the house because he was not feeling good. He was still driving at this time. We had arrived in New Mexico just a couple of days before. We were told by the caretakers that the mother's condition was not critical, just a severe infection to treat. The next morning, the caretaker called to say that Ollie had not visited the hospital, and she thought that was unusual for him. We called his cell phone, and the home phone, but got no answer. Thinking he was just sleeping late, and being so deaf he could not hear the phone, we decided to wait till about 10 a.m. and call again. We called again, both numbers, with no success, and called the McQuistions next door. They walked over and said that the car was not in the garage. By this time the whole family was involved, us from New Mexico, Chris from Midlothian, and the neighbors in Forney. The local Forney police, the Rockwall police, and the state police had all been notified that he was missing. We were about to head home when Mac McQuistion called. He had checked again about 2 p.m. and the car was in the garage. He knocked on the door and entered. Dad was lying in the bed asleep. Little by little he recalled and told his story of the night. He had decided to go to the hospital in Rockwall around 6 p.m. the previous night. It was raining, stormy and dark. He drove, and drove, and drove, so far that he had to fill the car with gas twice. He realized he was lost when he saw an Oklahoma road sign. Somehow, he found his way home around 1 p.m. the next day. He cleaned himself up, and fell in bed. At this point, he realized that his head was not right, and that he should not be driving. I had been worried for months about his driving, so at least this was a good thing. It was, however, an obvious sign of his rapidly increasing dementia. The duties that he took so much pride in from day to day, sorting the medicine, paying the bills, doling out the pay for the caretakers, etc., he no longer could do. About May 2015, Merlene and I found a great memory care center just 4 miles from our house. We moved Mom and Dad and furnished their apartment with furniture and pictures from their Forney home. It is a great place and they are as happy as can be expected given their mental and physical condition. It is December 2015 now and Mom's mental condition has deteriorated to the point that she recognized no one, not me or Merlene. His physical health, however, is good as it has been in the last few years. Dad's physical health is good, but mentally he is still declining. He knows who everyone is and what's happening, but his short-term memory is not good, and his hearing is worse. The good thing is that they are so close we see them several times a week, and Chris, Tiffany and family visit frequently. Grandkids and their future. I have been transferring this document from text format over to Microsoft Word. In the process, I have been reading some of the entries that I made many years ago. Quite entertaining, funny at times, and not too bad on the writing. It seems, though, that the more recent entries are more boring. Am I getting sober, stiff, flat? In my old age? Hunter Pierce, the first grandchild, the first grand boy. He is now a junior at Texas Tech. He has not flunked out whereas I flunked out for a while. His grades are not bad whereas I had plenty of low grades. He is, however, doing the college thing with parties and booze. I try not to interfere, but hope he does not make all the mistakes I did in school. He seems to be headed into the medical field. Therapy, chiropractics, or something like that. That is understandable since his dad is a nurse. It is hard to convey that every decision and action at this point can influence and set the path for the rest of his life. My life has worked out pretty well, and I want that for him also. Aubrey Chick, the first grand girl. She is a freshman at Point Park University in Pittsburgh. How about that dance? How about that dance? She loves to dance and can see herself as a dancer or in some related field. I hope it works for her. but worry about when she will find herself as a full-grown woman. Fisher Pierce, my second grand boy. Fisher is an art lover and a fashionista. This is his senior year in high school, and I am told that his grades have much improved from the past. He has reading problems which have affected his grades. He is looking forward to studying ASL, American Sign Language, in order to work with the deaf. I think this is a great goal, and also teaching would be great for him. Austin Chick, the third grand boy. Austin is smart, good-looking, good personality, and is full of possibilities. His dad, of course, would like to see him in his rep business. Lily Pierce, my second grand girl. Lily is smart and very independent. She does well in school, but I would like to see Mark and Chris encourage more academics. It would be great to see a doctor or lawyer or some kind of professional in the family. Crystal Chick Fuller, my first step-granddaughter. She went to college, got a degree, married, and is making a wonderful mother for the 2 children. What more could you ask for? As a grandfather, I don't seem to have much control of what my kids do about their future. That is probably what my parents thought, and my grandparents also. My grandparents were farmers and housewives, and perhaps seeing the hardships and hard lives that they lived had an influence on my education and work ethic. I have a good life, and I want that for my grandkids. I hope that along the way I have set an example that will in some way guide them. Nana Camp. The grandkids have enjoyed a special time in the week before Christmas each year, named Nana Camp. Merlene gathers arts, crafts, cookies, and other special activities for the children. This started years ago when they were preschool kids. I am writing this now while they are gathered around the kitchen table making gingerbread houses. They are singing along with the Christmas music that is playing on someone's cell phone. Hunter is 21, Aubrey is 19, Fisher is 18, Austin is 15, and Lily the baby is 12. They are all still little kids at heart and enjoy each other as much as being with their grandmother. Life is good. Sad times for the Stark family. Around the first part of 2015 it started to be apparent that Dad and Mom's conditions had deteriorated to the point that it took 3 caregivers day and night to take care of their needs. Dad's mental state made it impossible for him to handle his finances and direct the 3 ladies. The fact is that the bickering between the 3 of them made it difficult for Merlene and I to manage their times and pay. We visited several care homes near us in Cedar Hill and found a great place within 5 miles of our house. Oxford Glen Memory Care Center was a wonderful place where they shared a room much like an apartment. The caregivers were wonderful, and Dad loved the food service. When I say food service, he would sleep until 10 a.m., go into the dining area and order a custom breakfast. After milk, coffee, and tea, he would retire to their room and dress. Upon completing his morning ritual, he would return to the dining room and request breakfast. They would comply with a breakfast snack like oatmeal or toast, and he would return to the room to comb his hair or brush his teeth. Upon completion of that ritual, he would return and ask for breakfast again. They would comply by serving him lunch, as normally he would have spent lunch in his bathroom. His diabetic medicine had been discontinued and blood sugar was being controlled by diet. No more hassling from the Forney caregivers about what he ate, no more shots 3 times a day, and no more overdoses causing diabetic comas. As I said, he loved the food service. The caregivers at Oxford Glen would wake Mom, dress her, and roll her in for breakfast by 8 o'clock every morning. She always looked her best with deer screws, as she called them, rings, necklace, and decorated sweater. She was always cold, so a warm lap blanket was usually draped around her shoulders and over her legs. She had been in the wheelchair several years since she broke her hip, and the hip bone would not stay in the joint. When Mom and Dad arrived at Oxford Glen, I was a little worried about their use of the N word to describe the caregivers there. She was, after all, old school rural. I never heard it used, and Mother loved everyone there, including the 3 old black men that resided in their pod. When someone came near, she would grab their hand, kiss it, and refuse to let go. I too came to love and care for both the caregivers and residents. Mom's wheelchair-bound condition was the reason that the original caregiver was hired in Forney. Mom actually outlived her second caregiver, Mrs. Kuntz, as she contracted and died of cancer around 2014. Mom had never had a job outside the home and Dad saw himself as the provider. After she became wheelchair-bound, he would buy the groceries, hire and pay the caregivers, sort out her medicine, and boss the caregivers. Every time Mom would go to surgery she would come back with less cognitive ability. She could talk and carry on a conversation, but it was like playing back a recording with automatic responses to the same old subjects. It was a slow loss over the last 5 years of her life. Dad, on the other hand, was pretty sharp until about his 95th year. He had a fall and hit his head about that time, and it seems that started his mental decline. He was practically deaf, and this probably contributed to his cognitive loss. I should say something about a loved one losing their abilities to recognize and communicate with friends and family. I can't know what it is like for them, but for us it is like losing them bit by bit each week. It is heart-rending, and you mourn the loss of them each time you visit. It makes me aware that it is not the physical body we love but the connection of memories, thoughts, and shared life and love. I had been feeling that loss for the last 6 months of their life. Maybe that is why I felt no great mourning after they were gone. I was sad, and I still wake up thinking they are still here. I miss them, but I do not mourn. For them, I am sure that in the last few days, there was no joy, no comfort, and no recognition of us or their own existence. When you have lived a good and giving life, left behind a heritage for your children and grandchildren, loved and blessed, then your life is well done. Dad passed away, in bed, with myself, Kristen and Tiffany at his bedside on May 16, 2016. The funeral was held in Forney, at the Methodist Church by Reverend Sammy Hargrove. He looked way too good to be almost 97 years old and with all that flowing hair. I had made a video showing photos of his childhood and life and also written a eulogy. Tiffany read my eulogy, Mark Pierce spoke, and Jake Fuller spoke about his relationship with Dad and the greatest generation. I was told, by many, that it was an excellent funeral for such a worthy man. I would like to include a copy of my eulogy to my dad in this document. Written by Les Stark. Ollie Vernon Stark was born September 10, 1919 in Lawson, just across the river from Forney. He was the youngest child of Clayton and Esty with 3 sisters and 4 brothers. Dad grew up helping his father and brothers on the farm. After high school, he enrolled in a business school in Dallas. While completing his courses he met and made best friends with James Dozier. James had a younger sister who was just completing her senior year of high school at Forney, and an introduction was made. Love blossomed and they were married after she graduated. The honeymoon was a trip to an uncle's house in East Texas using a borrowed car. Leslie Vernon Stark was born May 7, 1941, and the United States was brought into World War II after the bombing of Pearl Harbor that year. Ollie worked first in a defense plant, then for Westinghouse in Dallas. He bought a house in Forney where Helen would take in boarders after he was shipped out to Europe to fight the war against Germany. He never spoke of his experiences during the war, and I understand that like many of his fellow soldiers they had to deal with their demons alone. A few years back I discovered photos of rows and piles of dead people with the name Nordhausen concentration camp scribbled on the back. After some questioning, I got a limited explanation. Dad arrived in Europe somewhere around 1944 and his unit of the army fought their way through France, Belgium and finally into Germany. During the final days of the war Hitler blew up many of the bridges crossing the Rhine River to slow the approach of the army into the heart of Germany. There was a railroad bridge at Remagen, Germany that was still intact when Dad's unit arrived at the Rhine. Tanks, armored vehicles and soldiers poured over the railroad bridge, 3 battalions in all, before the bridge collapsed from the previous bombing and heavy loads. His unit drove into the heart of Germany, and in the final days of the war they arrived at Nordhausen, the location of Hitler's underground V-2 rocket assembly plant. It was built under a mountain and consisted of 1 million square feet of tunnels and chambers where prisoners were used to assemble the rockets. When these prisoners, Jews, Russians, Poles, were too weak to work they were sent to an extermination camp nearby. This was Dora-Mittelbau concentration camp. Dad's unit had discovered the camp, and this is where the photo, hidden away for years in a bureau drawer, had been taken. The camp had more than 5,000 bodies with only about 750 survivors. The prisoners had been locked in concrete bunkers and starved to death. They used no gas chambers there. The units that liberated the Dora Middlebau concentration camp were the 104th Infantry Division and the 3rd Armored Division. He ended the war as a staff sergeant and returned to Forney to a wife and young son. That was the reason he never talked about the war. He never liked to camp out because the snow, rain and care rations he endured in the mountains were all he needed for a lifetime. In his final years his memory was foggy when asked, but he remembered the crossing of the Remagen Bridge, and I have the photo of the Nordhausen concentration camp liberation. Truly, this was the greatest generation, and Ollie Stark was part of it. After returning from Europe, he got a job with Watson Electric in Dallas and later became an independent manufacturer's representative for electrical products. Ollie was always bright, likable, ethical, and a good salesman. A second son, Rodney Allen Stark, was born in 1950. The American Legion, Masonic Lodge, and Methodist Church were the basis of the family's social life during those years. Most of the men around Ollie's age had served in the war, and there was a close bond among them and their families. He was financially able to build a new house in 1958 and sent Les off to college in 1959. Les graduated and worked for LTV Aerospace for 5 years. Ollie quit the rep business during that time and retired. A neighbor and friend, the Aikens, had a business for sale, and Ollie decided it might be good for a few more years for him, and a future for his sons. Ollie and Les bought the business around 1970, and later Rod bought Ollie's share. The business grew and came to have 6 warehouses covering 6 states. Even though he had retired after selling his share to Rod, he took great pride in the heritage created, which not only touched his family but that of the more than 50 employees of Southland. During the last few years, as Mom and Dad have fought the inevitable pains and sickness of old age, the thing that is most awesome is the devotion that they had for each other. The holding of hands, the kiss on the cheek, their selfless dedication forever. Rod passed away in 2006, and I, Les Stark, am writing this in 2016. My hope is that I have been able to pass on the work ethic, moral standards, ethics, family values and life lessons that were lived and taught by example from my father, to my own family, daughters, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank you, Lord, for giving me such wonderful parents.